The Quran says that Muslims are obligated to believe in the Torah, the Torah, and the Gospels, the Injil. Muhammad also commands people to judge his words by what's written in the Injil. So the question is, what is the Injil? Is it the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that we have in our Bibles today, or is it something else? Scholars have made an exciting new discovery. They have identified the Injil, the Gospel of Muhammad, and the Quran. And I'm going to tell you what it is right now. It's the Syriac Peshitta. I'm going to write it here. Peshitta. This means common or simple. What is Syriac? Syriac is a dialect of Aramaic. What is Aramaic? Aramaic is one of the three languages of the Bible. It's the language of Jesus Christ. It's the language of the book of Daniel and parts of Ezra. And it's a Semitic language, meaning it's related to Hebrew. Now, just so you understand how languages work, in prehistoric times, there's an extinct language called Proto-Semitic. Proto-Semitic. And Proto-Semitic developed into different languages. Like Akkadian, which is the first attested Semitic language. Then you have Arabic. You have the Ethiopic languages. You have the Canaanite languages, such as Hebrew. Hebrew is a Canaanite language. And then we have Aramaic. So these languages all are very similar because they all developed out of Proto-Semitic. So Aramaic is a biblical language. It's a language in parts of the Old Testament. Several Aramaic words and expressions are found in the New Testament. A lot of names, like Thomas, is Aramaic for twin. Martha is Aramaic for lady. Golgotha is Aramaic for place the skull. Talitha Kuma, which is what Jesus says, is little girl arise. So the Syriac Peshitta, where did this Bible come from? Well, this is an ancient branch of Christianity, the Syriac churches. The stories written in the early church fathers say that Thomas and Thaddeus and other apostles went to the east to Edessa and Mesopotamia, Babylonia, and planted these churches. So this is a very ancient version of the Bible, the Syriac Peshitta. Now, the Syriac Christians divided into different sects or denominations. They used to call one the Nestorian church, and the other, the Jacobite church. Now, traditionally, these churches go back, the Syriac church, the Aramaic church. After all, this is the language of Jesus Christ and the apostles. This is a very ancient form of Christianity. Traditions state that these churches go back to the time of the apostles. So we got apostolic times, right? Their origins, and they divided into these two denominations. Nestorian, because this is a Christological controversy. But I want to emphasize that both the so-called Nestorians and the so-called Jacobites, they're Trinitarian. They're Trinitarian. They affirm that Jesus Christ is God and that Jesus Christ is man. So they both agree on that. What they're disagreeing, they're splitting hairs. How can Jesus be God and man at the same time? Does Jesus have one divine nature? That's what the Jacobites. He's a human being, but he has one divine nature. That's the Jacobite position. The Nestorian position is he has two natures, divine and human. They argued about this. You had this big split. Nestorius is one who brought up these controversies. He did not found the proper name. It's called the Church of the East, the Assyrian Church of the East. The Jacobites, this is the Syrian Orthodox Church. Now, it's called Jacobite because there's a man called Jacob Bardanes. He was this sect was being suppressed by the Byzantine Empire, and he was secretly in disguise going around and ordaining clergy. So he kept this church going in a time of repression. So these are the two big, important sects. So what happened is both of these Aramaic Christian denominations had gone into Arabia. And I want to mention, so how do we know? How do we know that they were in Arabia? Well, there's a book called the Book of the Himyarites. This is about South Arabia. The Book of the Himyarites. This is a Syriac Orthodox book written in the year 523. About 100 years before Muhammad started claiming to be a prophet, this book is about the area of Najran. So, you had the Ghassanid tribes. I think that was one. I think they were Church of the East. But, so what had happened is Syriac Christians, Assyrian Christians of these two sects had already evangelized Arabia. There were still some pagan tribes here and there, but the book of the Himyarites talks about there's Jewish tribes. The Quran mentions this as well. Muhammad waged war against Jewish Arabian tribes. But there was a king who was persecuting, massacring the Christians. So Ethiopia, now the Ethiopian Orthodox Church is kind of a sister church to the Syrian Orthodox. So the Ethiopians invaded Arabia to defend the Christians who were being persecuted there. So the Book of the Himyarites is one of the historical accounts of how Christianity spread in Arabia 100 years before Muhammad made his claims to be a prophet. So Syriac Christians are using the Syriac Peshitta Bible. And the Syriac Peshitta Bible is readily available. In fact, I have a copy of the Syriac Peshitta Bible right here. And you can see the Aramaic text on one side, the English on the other. It's equivalent to our Bible. It's just in Aramaic. And you can get copies of translations of the Bible from the Aramaic. George Lamza, an Assyrian American, translated the whole Bible from Aramaic into English. And before that, you had, in the 1800s, you had John Wesley Etheridge, and then you also had James Murdoch, who made translations. And there's many others. This one is by Jan McGrera, and you can get Aramaic study Bibles like this one. You see the Aramaic script there and an English translation. There's a variety of English translation. And by the way, if you want to know information about Aramaic, here's my book, The Words of Jesus in the Original Aramaic, by me. I have other books written on this subject. I want to mention one more thing as we continue here, that there was a man called Tatian the Assyrian. And Tatian the Assyrian, he was the student of Justin Martyr. And I've been reading Justin Martyr's writings. He's a great early apologist. And this is his student. Justin Martyr, of course, was martyred. And Tatian the Assyrian worked to continue his ministry, his work. And Tatian the Assyrian produced what might be the first harmony of the four Gospels. So he took Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and put them together. And for a long time among Aramaic Christians, the diatessaron of Tatian the Assyrian was the Gospels that they used. But it's a harmony of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And on top of that, it begins from the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word. Jesus is the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. All things were made by Him. When Muhammad says, judge my prophethood and my doctrine by the Gospels, he's talking about the Syriac Bible, the Syriac Gospels, which includes the Aramaic versions of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But it could also include the diatessaron, which is a harmony of the four Gospels, which is also in Aramaic, produced by Tatian the Assyrian. Now, it's very interesting that we have an Arabic translation of the diatessaron of Tatian the Assyrian, because there were certain church leaders in these Eastern churches who saw that the Assyrian Christians were using the diatessaron of Tatian the Assyrians exclusively. They weren't using the four Gospels. So there are certain Eastern bishops who thought that it was important to bring the Eastern churches and their traditions and practices in conformity with the larger Christian world. So the use of the diatessaron of Tatian the Assyrian, even though that was the Assyrian Gospels for a long time, it was suppressed so thoroughly that we don't have a copy. We do have a commentary by St. Ephraim, the Syrian. He did a commentary on the Diatessaron, which is it's not surprising. It's not to be unexpected, because that was the Bible they used. That was as far as the four Gospels, they would use the Diatessaron. Was their primary version of the Gospels they used. But either way, if you're looking at the four Gospels, you're looking at the Diatessaron notation of the Assyrian, you're looking at the Bible that we have today. So in the end, the way it comes down to is that Muhammad is saying, I want you to consult the Torah, the Old New Testament, and the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the rest of the New Testament, because it's in kind of inclusive terms. Judge me by, this is the main Bible. I'm sure that the Jewish people, the Jewish tribes, they're using probably the equivalent of the Masoretic text. And the thing is, we have manuscripts that predate Islam. So one of the things that Muslims try to do is, no, there's another gospel out there. There's no evidence of any other gospels. Now, another thing that the Muslims would try to do is, knowing that the Ebionites were sects of Jewish Christians. Some of them were heretical, some were more orthodox than others, according to Eusebius. Many Ebionites most of them were non-Trinitarian. They didn't believe in the Trinity. Some of them were adoptionist, which means they believed that Jesus became the Messiah when he was baptized. So this is a blanket term for Jewish Christians. Some of them did have heretical beliefs. Some of them were closer to orthodoxy. And we have, what we know about the Ebionites is they used a version of the Gospel of Matthew, very, very, almost identical. There's some slight differences, but basically, the Ebionites are using the Gospel of Matthew. The early church fathers had encounters with the Ebionites. We had access to their Bibles, like the Nazarenes. The Nazarenes were another group of Jewish Christians. Their Aramaic version of the Gospel of Matthew was kept in the library of Caesarea for centuries, and the early church fathers would consult this Aramaic version of the Gospel of Matthew, which they believe was the original one. And it's the same. There are some minor differences, but it's virtually the same as the Gospel of Matthew we have today. And we have Ebionite literature. This is in Aramaic as well. This is the recognitions of Clement, the Roman, and it's a story about Simon Peter, evangelizing Syria, starting at Caesarea, which you just mentioned, going all the way up to Antioch, and his struggles against Simon the sorcerer. So this is believed to have been written by the Ebionite Jewish Christians. So really what I'm saying is, this is a very popular, the recognitions of Clement and the homilies of Clement, very popular books, had a huge influence even in Roman Catholicism, and it's part of the traditions we have of the life of St. Simon Peter. That's what this is. This book is in Aramaic. This one, I believe the original version of this might have been written in Greek. But as far as the recognitions, we have Latin and Aramaic copies of it. But there's these Ebionites that wrote this literature. They're Christians. They're Christians. And all these doctrines that the Muslims would like to say, these were corruptions, the Bible and things were changed. The original gospel is more Islamic. You don't have that option. There's no evidence of that from the historical record. Not from the Aramaic Bible, the Syriac Peshitta, which is the Bible that was used in Arabia before, 100 years before and during the time of Muhammad and after the time of Muhammad. They just found in Dubai, or outside Dubai, United Arab Emirates, they found a large monastery which had been destroyed. So they had if you have Assyrian Christian communities, you have the Peshitta Bible. That's their Bible. And it's not just the Assyrian Church of the East. The Syrian Orthodox, the so-called Jacobites, they use the same Bible. The Peshitta Bible is already established as the Aramaic Bible. So that's the other thing. And Georgia Beltan brings this up because he says, this is the Islamic dilemma. He says, Muhammad affirmed that we had the Gospels. Number one, Muhammad affirmed in the Koran that we had the Gospels. The Gospels already in existence. Number two, it's like, when it was changed, it had to be changed after the time of Muhammad. And Georgia Beltan, who's a Syrian Orthodox bishop, says, we can't get along. Was there a church council of the Ethiopians, the Assyrians, the Syrian Orthodox? It's like we can't agree on how Jesus is both God and man. How are we going to agree to change the Bible, or what's going to go in and what's going to come out? The Bible is already established, and we have solid manuscript evidence of the Aramaic Bible is indisputable. So the Islamic dilemma is a true dilemma, and it shows Islam wrong.
Jesus was an Aramaic-speaking Jew of the Middle East, and the Assyrians are Aramaic-speaking Christians in the Middle East who have endured persecution for over 1,000 years. Join Voice of the Word Aramaic Bible teacher, artist, and author Stephen Missick as he examines the Bible through the ancient languages, peoples, lands, cultures, and times in which it was first revealed. Research the Scriptures, rescue persecuted Christians, and restore the Church to its Semitic roots. And now, Voice of the Word.
And I want to say really quick at the conclusion of this video, this is not new information. There is the Syrian Orthodox Church and the Church of the East still exist. Everybody should know about Aramaic Christianity. This is not a new discovery. These are established historical facts. The book of the Himyarite, these Aramaic Gospels were translated like over 100 years ago. This is not new discovery. Some people, somebody just wrote this article and said that, wow, the Syriac Peshitta Bible. That's common sense. Of course the Syriac Peshitta Bible is the Bible in Arabia. That's well known, and it's just facts of history that anybody knows anything about this region, but people don't. They don't know about Aramaic. I was watching these two videos. It's very, very annoying, right? Number one, please, for God's sake, cut to the chase. I watched this video. It's like, oh, we found the original Gospels that Mohammed is talking about in the Koran. And so you watch the video. Of course, I already know all this information. I've been studying this my whole life. And this guy's like, oh, I'm going to tell you, we just found the Gospel that was in Arabia at the time of Mohammed, the real Injil. I'm going to tell you, just wait. He keeps on saying this over and over again for like 20 minutes. And then the last 10 minutes of his program, he talked about the Peshitta Bible. Don't waste people's time. Just get up there and say what you got to say. Plus, this is information people need to know about. They shouldn't have to sit down. Oh, I promise you, stick with me. In 20 minutes, I'm going to tell you, just wait, just keep on watching. In 20 minutes, I'm going to tell you about the Bible of Muhammad's time, what the real Injil was. I just wait and just hold on for a little bit longer. In 5-10 minutes, I swear to God, I'm going to tell you. That's not Christian to act that way. Stop wasting my time. And they had this other guy that did a video. Oh, we got this brand new discovery. Oh, so-and-so and so-and-so wrote this big article, and look what we found out. The Bible is already known in Arabia, and it's the Peshitta Bible, the Peshitta Bible. Can't you just do a cursory web search? Can't you say Peshitta? I know it sounds kind of vulgar. Well, a lot of things that we say in English will probably sound vulgar in Aramaic ears. Peshitta Bible. It's not hard to say, and in the 1800s, it's the Bible in Aramaic. That's the language of Jesus. It's got some significance. So, people have been interested in studying the Aramaic Bible over 100 years ago. The translators of the King James Bible mentioned they had access to the Aramaic Bible and they consulted in their translation. This is not new information. It's just people are so profoundly ignorant. Book of the Himyarites. Look at, if you find an edition of it, it's been translated over 100 years ago, but people are acting like this is brand new information, like some exciting new discovery. And this guy's like, oh, give me money so I can put up a commercial. And he was saying that Arabic is descended from Aramaic. They're Semitic language. They're different Semitic language. They're not ancestors one to another, not traced to each other. They developed independently from Proto-Semitic. Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, Ethiopian languages, they all developed independently from the prehistoric Proto-Semitic language. They are closely related because they have a common origin. But Aramaic is not a dialect of Hebrew like some people think, because certain sections of the Hebrew Bible are in Aramaic, people make the false conclusion that Aramaic is derived from Hebrew. It's not. They're two independent Semitic languages that evolved or developed separately, close together, because when the Bible talks about Jacob has a meeting with Laban, and they built an altar which Laban calls Jagar Shadutha. Jacob and Laban build an altar to the Lord, and Laban calls it Jagar Shadutha, which means heap of witness in Aramaic, and Jacob calls it Galid, which means heap of witness in Hebrew. So these languages develop closely together. And a lot of times, the words sound a lot alike. In that instance, they don't, but often Hebrew and Aramaic, a lot of the words are very similar because they're related languages. but they didn't descend from each other. Also, Arabic also developed independently, is not derived from Aramaic. So, I mean, if you're going to put a video out there, I got sensational new information, a brand new discovery, at least pronounce Peshitta correctly and get your facts right. Get your facts right. So, in this video, I wanted to cut the chase, and I don't know. We can do better. There's this. There's a fake he's a polemicist. He's anti-Christian polemicist. What's his name called? Dan McClellan, and he puts a lot of false information out. He does these little three very complex scholarly issues. He puts 2 to 3 minute video trying to sow doubt in people's minds. It's like, well, that's not. Yeah, he's done some research, but that's not accurate what he's saying. He's just trying to sow doubts in people's minds. But he was criticizing a prominent Christian apologist. And, I was thinking, well, that's probably good he's criticizing him, because if you're going to stand up and say, I'm a scholar, I'm an expert, you should get your facts straight, right? If you're going to be a Bible teacher. I took the time to earn a doctorate, and it's important. We have to. There's a lot of error and deception out there, and we got to put the truth out there. And Christians need to be educated and get the facts out there. Don't wait. I don't understand. We just found the real Injil. We just found the real Injil. Stick with me. In 10 minutes, just wait. I'm going to repeat myself talking about how, we had a sensational new discovery. That's just, that's unchristian to act that way. If you got something important to say it. This illustrates why it's important for Christians to know about the history of the Assyrian church and the other Syriac churches. We need to know these things. It's important, especially dealing with the threat of radical Islam. And another thing is the history of persecution of Christians, especially the Syrian Christians, which is going on today. Muslims prey off of people's ignorance. And they'll say things, we're so kind to our Christian populations and we're so tolerant. And you just open a history book on this region. And that's the problem. Is it used to be when you study church history, you're not studying church history, you're studying Western Christendom history, maybe a little bit of information about the Byzantine Empire. These important contributions of the Assyrian Christians, the Ethiopian Christians, the Coptic Christians, the churches of India and China, they've been overlooked for far too long. This is important, and we need to expand our knowledge so we combat ignorance and establish the truth. And as we know, Jesus said about the truth, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Research, rescue, and restore. Help Voice of the Word and Aramaic Christian Ministries mission research the ancient languages, peoples, lands, cultures, and times of the Bible. Rescue persecuted Assyrian Christians in the Middle East and restore Christianity to its original Semitic roots. For Stephen Missick's books, online giving, and other resources from Aramaic Christian Ministries, visit www.stephenmissick.com. Join us next time on Voice of the Word as we research the Scriptures, rescue persecuted Christians, and restore the church to its Semitic roots.